My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. Exclusive.
Got to pause the music or?
No, I am the
So you're
music
just gonna
today.
keep playing. Okay,
Oh,
perfect.
all right.
Perfect. All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another installment of No Place Like Homaha. I'm your host, JD Wonder, alongside Nick Hendricks and Mikey Love.
And
got
we are
quite a
sponsored by
few things.
Flintstone Gummies.
Sure. We are, yeah. Okay. Usually brought up at the end, but thanks for ahead of time. Again, shout out Cronio Media for shouting out
You
people.
gotta keep them on their toes.
Anyways. So we got a lot to kind of talk about as far as games are concerned. We had a game go to the 17th inning.
Yeah, screw that pitch clock.
In Evansville. Went 17.
Wednesday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. The final score was 1-2. I'm gonna be honest with you. Vanderbilt is not looking like solid. You know what I'm saying? Like they're getting.
I would agree.
Like today, again, since this kind of just happened for us, when we're recording this, LMU upset Vanderbilt and they won 9-6. So I don't know how to describe it at this point. In all honesty.
Well, in the rest of their weekend against Marymount, they went 2-1 on Friday and then 2-0 yesterday. But like you said, I mean, they've
holding them close.
Yeah, they've had a couple of big wins. They got a big ranked win against Maryland earlier back on March 4th. They beat a Minnesota team who I think in the Big Ten has played consistent over the last couple of years. They have not been truly able to make a big breakthrough. They got a big series win against UCLA back in February at the beginning of the season. Other than that, I mean, and then Oklahoma State's another ranked win for them. They beat Texas, which everybody's been beating Texas. It's fine. TCU, they took TCU, they took an L2, but I mean, they're getting big wins still, but their wins are sloppy.
Right. And it's saying that they're winning against ranked opponents, but then they're either holding them close or losing to unranked opponents.
Yeah. So
that's just a big thing for me.
Mm-hmm. Their pitching, I think, has still been a big key factor for them. I mean, their bullpen has still been pretty solid. When you take a 17-inning game and you're able to get through a rotation like that, Carter Holton for Vanderbilt has still been pretty good. His last outing against Marymount, he had 6 innings, 3 hits, only gave up 1 run, 7 strikeouts throughout his start on 99 pitches. So, I mean, you take a look at this Vanderbilt staff, it may not be the greatest in the SEC at the moment for the beginning of the year, but coming into SEC play, they open up with an Ole Miss team who right now seems to be playing, out of anybody in the SEC, probably the most consistent baseball that I've seen. They have a bunch of big bats that have been kind of powering it through. They had a big walk-off win yesterday, but Kemp Alderman for Ole Miss has been absolutely fantastic. He had the walk-off home run Oppo Taco yesterday, so the showers in right field were screaming. But like I said, consistently, Ole Miss's offense has been there time and time again. Big full series sweep against the 13th, or a big series win against the Maryland team with a 10-run at the end, and then they come up and win Game 4 against them in the Cambry Classic, 5-1. You got a big win against Minnesota team. You have a team against Nebraska who knocked off Vanderbilt in that Minnesota Classic or the Cambry Classic in Minnesota. They beat them 14-5. Big win against Southern Miss. They had 2 wins now against Purdue. Looking for 3 today. They're up 3-1 right now against the Boilermakers in the 8th. So, I mean, you look at this team and you take a look at how Vanderbilt plays them next for a 3-game series to open up SEC play. And then for Ole Miss, they have a Florida team who is red hot on the sticks as well. So I think this will be a great test for Ole Miss to see how they can go. But Vanderbilt needs kind of a pick-me-up. They need something to be able to get them going. They got Belmont coming up against them on a Tuesday game here on March 14th. So it'll be interesting to see where they go early in the season. But if their pitching can stay good, their offense just needs to get fully on track to be where I think they should be towards the middle of the season.
I agree. Talking then about another SEC opponent that Jacksonville had faced earlier in the season, and now they face an ACC opponent. They had beaten number 7 Florida earlier in the season. Jacksonville They faced Miami in Coral Gables and won 6-3. So that was another big upset from the week that I had to kind of point out. Otherwise, Nick, do you have any other upsets that kind of stood out to you?
I mean, we can talk about it from, I believe when it was the past week, Coastal Carolina with their big upset win against Wake Forest. That I think just that showed you that Coastal Carolina is still here. And as I kind of pull up their schedule, but Wake Forest is a team that is beatable. And we all knew this. This wasn't going to be a thing where Wake Forest was going to squeak through the season undefeated. They were going to deal with some tests. I mean, this Coastal Carolina team, who is 9-5 right now, they had a big loss against NC State. They had a big series win against Creighton. And then you take a 13-11 win this past Tuesday on March 7th, and then they split the series so far against Illinois. Their last game got canceled 16-8 this last Friday, and then yesterday they had a 13-3 loss. They play Campbell coming up next. This Coastal Carolina team is no pushover. But this Wake Forest team is also not going to be somebody who, like I said, is going to win every single game this season. This SEC schedule that they got is chalked up. And I think that if you kind of break it down from a standpoint, Wake Forest is going to be one of those all-around teams that just had everything clicking on a standard. They had a loss against Duke earlier this week, 8-1, or this weekend, 8-1 on Saturday. But you got an 8-6 win Friday, and then you got the series win today, earlier this afternoon, 5-3. They got another SEC or ACC opponent in Notre Dame coming up next. But otherwise, I didn't really see too many upsets from this past week's schedule. I can take a look, and if we see anything else, I can give an update on it. But so far, baseball has been consistent where we've seen certain teams either downfall early or certain teams come up big late. I think if you really just want to keep diving into stuff, we can do that because there wasn't too many big upsets from this past weekend so far.
Yep, I'm trying to pull them up. So
I think you need to. I know the Duke team is actually not. I think is a very underrated team though in the ACC. I think because that alone, that's a hard conference.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's easily second best conference in the country. You obviously got the SEC, which is loaded, the ACC then, which is essentially loaded as well. And I feel they're not gonna push and just run through people like some of these other teams will, but they're not gonna just let people run through them.
Oh, absolutely not.
They took one against Wake. Obviously, they probably would have liked to have taken the series.
Mm-hmm.
But then they've got a series against North Carolina, a series against Virginia Tech, a series against Louisville, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Miami. All of those teams are ranked top 15, I believe.
Yes, very much so.
Yep.
Top 20. My apologies.
Misinformation.
Well, and you got to look. They beat an East Carolina team who at the time in February was ranked 9th, and they beat them 9-0.
Pitt is good. East Carolina is good. And then you got a team, I think, in Pitt who's winning right. Yeah, they're beating Florida State right now.
Mm-hmm.
Texas Tech just hit a home 2-run bomb. Now it's 10-9, bottom of the 9th.
Love it.
Texas Tech isn't ranked though.
No, Iowa's ranked 23.
Iowa is.
However,
Iowa
Texas Tech does have a better record than Iowa does.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa snuck in, and so did Campbell.
And there's nobody out.
Two surprises.
Yeah.
Two surprises in that rankings.
Well, and kind of what Mikey was talking about earlier, you got Wake Forest, who, as I'm currently looking at Duke's schedule here, this is the biggest thing that where he said to kind of back up his point where the ACC is probably one of the second toughest, if not this year, potentially the toughest conference in baseball. Wake Forest, ranked 5th in the country. North Carolina, 14. You got a Pitt team who is trying to break through. Virginia Tech, ranked 11th. Louisville, 9th. Virginia, 17th. I mean, this ACC conference, Georgia Tech could find a way to sneak in there. If Miami cleans up a little bit of their act and gets to this very sophomore-heavy team and sophomore-junior-heavy team, their offense could be very, very dangerous as well. And the rest of Duke's schedule, I mean, you had East Carolina, who was ranked. Wake Forest took one from North Carolina. That's going to be a big 3-game series. Campbell, they play twice on the schedule, who we just said is ranked 24th in the country. Virginia Tech ranked. Louisville, Virginia. I mean, they have a very big gauntlet coming up in the middle of the season to be able to say, all right, where can we stand on this team and where can we go in the ACC? Because, I mean, currently right now they have Luke Storm, who is ranked at the moment on Division I's top 10 for runs scored. He has 22 runs scored in a 12-game span. Just up else on that list, you got Tommy Hawk from Wake Forest, Brock Wilkin from Wake Forest as well. So there's 3 ACC guys sitting on that list for runs scored. Batting average wise, I mean, there's 3 ACC players in there. You've got Chris Canizero from Virginia Tech. He's so far hitting 526, and this is all the stats from before the weekend came out. You've got Kyle Teal, who is still lighting it up for Virginia in another year. He's hitting 568. And then, so the ACC is trying to really take it on. And now Brock Wilkin, he was leading the home runs for college baseball with 11 at the beginning of the weekend. And now from Florida, you've got
the two-way, right?
Yeah. And then now you've got Jack Gillinon, who is, I believe he's at 14 on the weekend.
He throws 98 from the right.
And then like 93 from the left.
No, that's the kid from Mississippi State.
Oh,
yeah.
No, this guy, he's I think he's a pitcher by trade, but
and then he's a switch hitting.
Yeah. I think he's a starting pitcher for the Gators. The dude pumps gas.
Yeah,
and then just hits bombs.
And he had a shutout today against Siena. I believe so.
I don't think there's any undefeated teams anymore either, by the way.
No.
I think they're all lost.
Well, it's bound to happen too. I mean,
I'm actually surprised many undefeated teams as we did. And of course, as we talked about it last week, all of them just seemed to take an L at the beginning of the week.
Yeah, there was 5 coming into this week. Virginia lost. They're one of, I think, 2 teams with one loss. NC State lost. Alabama lost.
Yeah, NC State was upset in the first game by Miami.
Yeah.
On Friday.
But speaking of records,
you want to talk about Northwestern University?
Still
0-12.
Oof.
Still winless. Iona is 2-11.
Dang.
And a new challenger.
They're right on their they're right on their heels.
A new challenger has arisen.
Oh, who got?
The Mexico State Aggies.
What? That's shocking.
Mexico State?
0-12.
They're 0-12 as well?
I don't like the sound of that.
Tough look.
Pretty cool.
So we got winless. So, I mean, Iona's out because they've already won some games.
Yep, they've got 2 dubs, yep.
So they're out of the running.
Northwestern and New Mexico State.
So it's the
race.
So you imagine if there's 2 defeated teams for the season. You can't say
imagine
undefeated.
All 3 of these guys end their season only with 2 wins. We have a 3-way tie.
That would be
bizarre. Then they got a rock paper scissors for who is.
I'll send an email to all 3 of them.
Speaking of upsets though, just looking at Friday's scores. I don't know how the rest of the
before you go. Old Dominion. We just need to start with them real quick. 13-2.
I'm gonna plug them real fast.
Right. I just want to talk to whoever
the committee.
Decide the top 25.
I want to talk to them.
That's what I know.
Anyways,
friendly conversation.
Valparaiso beat Southern Miss on Friday. Columbia upset Alabama on Friday. And San Diego upset TCU. And I believe that was...
Didn't they just beat another team yesterday?
Upsets. Who did?
San Diego.
No, they played a weekend series, I believe, against TCU. And I think they lost today. Boston College upset Virginia Tech in the second game they played.
Well, and TCU has been struggling a little bit too. We started off the year talking about them, how they're a very solid team kind of coming into this season. Had a big couple of ranked wins early on in the first few games. Series loss to Florida State. They kind of start bouncing back, but they're on a 9-6 record so far this this year. They with the series win against
because
San
TCU,
Diego.
TCU bounced back and won both.
Yep, and then they've got a big midweek game against the Texas State team, who offensively is just on fire to open up this year. So a TCU team that's struggling like this kind of raises some questions for the Big 12 of where they're going, because Texas is struggling right now. You've got Texas Tech, who now got bounced out of the top 25 with a loss against Iowa today that would really, I think, raise some questions. Oklahoma State, to me, has been the most consistent team when you look at the Big 12 so far.
Trash conference. I don't know what to tell you. It's up there with the conference that will not be named.
Mikey's been dead against that West Coast conference.
I hate that. Yeah,
I hate that.
I do hate though how it kind of seems like for baseball, there's only two powerhouse conferences.
Did you say the SEC?
The Big 12 is not going to overwhelm you. They'll have a few teams. The Big 10 is not going to overwhelm you. They'll usually have one or two teams. The conference who won't be named is okay. But then you look at the ACC and the SEC, and it's just jam-packed.
You got to think about, too, like, where they are, like, geographically.
Mm-hmm.
You think about what kind of weather you get there.
The only conference that's really in a downfall would be the Big East and the Big 10, theoretically, if we're going based off of weather.
Mm-hmm.
Because the East and West Coast, you're at least excluding like New York and Virginia and stuff, you really only have hot weathers and then rain. And like as you get up into like the Big East specifically has like snow, different weather, like cold,
right?
Everything like that. The Midwest has the same, but then the Big 12 doesn't really have those excuses. The SEC doesn't. The ACC doesn't. The conference that won't be named doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But so the SEC and the ACC are going to be the. Well, let's think about this too. Let's think about that.
Right, but what sets them apart from the Big 12 and the conference that won't be named?
They also like have, I feel like, better access to players. You got to think like Texas alone is going to have a ton of players that they can choose from.
Right, but then why isn't Texas? Like, why is the Big 12 lacking?
Why is the what? Why is the Big 12?
Why is the Big 12 lacking?
Because it's still kind of spread out.
So here's my logic behind all of this here. And this might be an interesting take. If you take a look at consistently how many teams have made I don't know if I can pull up the bracket here from last year to see if, so like, let's pull this up here. So I've got the bracket on my screen from last year's CWS and full regional tournament. There were, let me count this off. 1, 2, 3. Well, I'm trying to.
I think there's 8 teams that were there.
There were 4 teams alone from the Big 12 last year. You had TCU in the regional tournament.
Okay.
You had TCU, Texas Tech, Texas, and then Oklahoma, or 5 teams. Sorry, 5 teams if you count both the Oklahoma schools and then 3 Texas schools. You had 5 teams coming from there.
But that round's 32 is 32 teams, correct?
Correct, or it's 64.
Oh, so you're just talking the round of 64.
Yeah, well, I'm just talking the whole tournament itself. You had, as you got into the tournament, there were 5 Big 12 teams. When you take a look at the SEC margin, you had Tennessee, Ole Miss is in there. You had Texas A&M going down the line. You had Florida.
I think it was everybody like minus Kentucky, Missouri.
Yeah. The SEC had a lot of teams in there.
The SEC did. The ACC did. The no-name conference had a few teams. The Big 10 had what?
2. Rutgers? You had Michigan and Maryland, because remember, Rutgers got screwed out at the end of the year.
Rutgers got duped.
Right. So right there alone, you've got what? 7 with the Big 10 and Big 12. The no-name conference had what? Probably 4.
Let's see. Oregon State.
Stanford.
Stanford. UCLA.
UCLA was in there. That was the only 3 from the pack. That was the only 3 from
the no-name conference.
From no
So
name.
that alone is only you have 10 teams. 10 teams out of 64 from 3 conferences. That's 3 conferences represented right there.
So then let's
You're
throw it
telling
to
me 54 teams were then split between the SEC, the ACC, and not Power 5.
Because here we'll dive this even further here. So for the ACC, you had Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, you had going down the list Virginia, you had Virginia Tech was in there. ACC had Florida State as well. You had Miami in there.
Wasn't Clemson in there?
Clemson was not.
Really?
So you had 6 teams from them, and then throwing it all the way to the SEC. You had 90% of the SEC conference in there. We also forgot to throw Arizona in there for the conference that should not be named as well.
11 from those 3. My bad.
And then you take a look at the other non-power 5s. I mean, the Sun Belt had a good representation with Coastal Carolina, Texas State, and then Southern Miss in there as well. So, I mean, looking at that alone, when you have 2 conferences that pretty much the majority of your conference makes the NCAA tournament, and combining the Big 12 and the Big 10 in there for only 11 other teams, that says a lot when it comes to, yes, because we throw the no name in there with the SEC and then every other Power 5.
Oh, okay.
That because both those teams had the majority of their conferences already in there set to go. You take a look at how the Big 12 only has that maybe, I want to say every 4 years or something like that. You take a look at how the Big 10 now consistently has had maybe 2 to 3 teams go every season consistently for like the last 3 years.
Yeah, but that's been Texas and probably Texas Tech, and we can maybe mix in Oklahoma State.
Well, I was talking about the Big 10 when you had Michigan, who's now gone for the last 4 years. No, sorry. Big 10, you had Michigan, and now you throw Maryland into that mix. Nebraska has been at least in the regional tournament 2 out of the last 4 years. But then you take a look at the Big 12, who, like you just were saying, consistently only sends either
you got 3 teams, maybe?
Yeah,
3 or 4.
Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, TCU, and then we'll throw Texas in the mix. That's only 4 teams that consistently go, but every other conference.
And you're losing. Did you list Oklahoma?
Oklahoma hasn't really been to the regional tournament.
So you're losing one of those 4.
Yeah.
And the SEC is essentially gaining one Texas team that's usually pretty good, and Oklahoma, who you just never really know, at least in terms of baseball. And then the Big 12 is bringing in, 4 teams?
Yep. BYU, Cincinnati, Central Florida, and Houston.
And the only team of those that's really, I guess, known for baseball is Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, even then, that's not a common thing. So does something need to be done in terms of the round of 64 and how that gets selected? Because at that point, you're just playing a turn. It's basically the SEC tournament times 2 is what's happening. And the SEC tournament doesn't really even mean anything. If 90% of those teams are going.
You got to think just competition-wise. Like that's
I think the round of 64 should be the best 64 teams.
Yeah.
And so I don't – but how do you get that? Because then if you have one person, at least one team from each conference will be there, theoretically. At least
because you have
your conference champions.
They get a bid.
Yes,
they get that.
Even then,
or if they split the regular season, then you have one regular season, one conference. Those 2. Then you have at large next.
Well, what if you play in a conference that's not very good? Like the Sun Belt, for example. I'm not saying it's not very good. Like they've got some teams. They've got decent teams.
Yes.
But they've got a Georgia Southern. I believe it's Georgia Southern or Southern Miss, one of the 2.
They've got
been
both.
Pretty good the past couple years. And then you got like an Old Dominion. Like there could be a year. I love the Old Dominion Lions. But like they're not gonna blow you away like an LSU's going to. So like, what if Georgia Southern, Southern Miss, Coastal Carolina all have down years, and the Old Dominion Lions just run through the Sun Belt Conference? but then they're not the best team. Could an argument be made that they don't deserve to go to the tournament?
Now, is
I
this
still
also
feel like
basing?
you have to have good representation for all the schools, or else it would be just then those
Right.
bigger schools that would go.
But then, do you, as a smaller school, try to push to get into a bigger conference? Which I think part of it's based off of like enrollment numbers and money from
boosters and everything.
Escaped me, yeah. And like I get that, like LSU's going to have more money than an Old Dominion in terms of who's like money coming into the school. But LSU has that name, that brand, that reputation because of where the conference they're in.
Yeah.
If LSU is in the Sun Belt or the Big East or the Mountain West, they're not getting that recognition that they currently have. Nor are they probably getting the recruits. So I don't know. I think best 64 teams.
Which, and I might make this argument might kind of deflate what you just said real quick. Because, I mean, if you really look at the pool of 64, even with the at-large bids after everybody wins your conference. So you get your winner of the Sun Belt, we'll get your winner of the American, which UConn and then the Big East, which UConn took over. Grand Canyon, throw them in there for a conference tournament. Missouri State for the Mo Valley. If you really look at it, you still get teams that get at-large bids. But here's the problem with the at-large bids. It goes 90% of the time to anybody else that's ranked that didn't win a conference that is already in a Power 5. It's a team like Texas, who didn't win the Big 12 conference because Oklahoma did. They won the regular season, but they didn't win the conference. You get a team like Arizona, who I believe did not win the Pac-12, and I have to say it just because we're in there. You get a team like Oregon, who's in there, who was ranked at the end of the year, but wasn't a top 16 national seed. You get teams, Gonzaga won their conference, Wright State won their conference, but you get all these other teams like Texas Tech. Texas Tech didn't win any share of the Big 12 at all. Texas Tech gets thrown in there. Wake Forest didn't win the ACC. Wake Forest gets thrown in there. Michigan didn't win the Big 10. Maryland did. But Michigan gets in there. Your at-large bids now become who is, and this is not a good thing by any standards, because I agree, it should be the best 64 teams that get to go. But 90% of the time, the bad part of it is the best 64 teams come from a majority of your Power 5 teams that have not had a losing record. You get to teams like, let's say, Southeast Louisiana, because I don't even know what conference they are in at the moment, but you get a team like them, if they got an at-large bid, whose place did they take?
Yeah, and then they most likely
be a Power
go
5.
and play. They go and they play the top team from, like, they'll go play like a TCU.
They were in Auburn's region last year. Yeah, the region that Southeast Louisiana was in last year was Auburn's, and you're favoring a 14th ranked Auburn national seed, a Florida State team, and then a UCLA. Talk about getting the shaft.
Well, this is going to sound contradictory to what I said, but the good thing with baseball is, like, the Southeast Louisiana team, they may be able to beat an Auburn in the first game. But then we're thinking where they're at the disadvantage is game 2, game 3, when they don't have those arms that can handle. Now, is the reason why this round of 64 is like that is because of the selection committee. The selection committees are usually made up of ADs from schools. So is there potentially corruption going on, or is there, like, not even biases potentially being out there? Because you think of it, most of the time, I know this, like, for the NCAA, for the college football playoffs, the committee that's on that are the ADs of other powerhouse schools. So, like, they choose who, like, they determine what 4 teams are in it.
Yes.
And who oversees them to make sure that it's fair.
I believe it's the NCAA officially, because when you look at it, according to how, and as we break that down, because this might help for some of our listeners to kind of break down how they do the field of 64, strength of schedule is the quote unquote biggest play that you can have. But then if you take a look at some of these SEC teams for football, let's say, 90% of your freaking conference is mediocre at best. You get breakout teams that come up every year in the SEC, but when you're constantly getting run by Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee now gets thrown into the mix for the next couple of years based on their win against Alabama, Hendon Hooker getting injured, but you still make a run for the SEC. But you get teams like that who go play in the middle of the year in Austin Peay, who is not going to stand a chance, gets paid $6 million to come up to Tuscaloosa and play them just to get their shit absolutely rocked. Then you throw in teams like Kentucky. You throw in teams like Vanderbilt, who this year apparently, to start surprising everybody, was decent at football. You get teams like Missouri, who has not had an ounce of respect in the SEC since joining the conference. That now starts becoming, where do you draw the line on that? Texas and Oklahoma are going over there. And for my personal opinion, it'll take them a couple of years because Texas basketball just won the Big 12 for the men's side. Oklahoma men's basketball was at least in the running for the conference tournament, and the Big 12 had the biggest win margin of over 500 teams as an overall ranking in basketball than any other conference this season, which is thoroughly impressive. Now you throw it into the baseball mix. You've got Texas and Oklahoma leaving, going to the SEC. So there's two more mediocre teams in baseball, because I'll give Texas this. They're good at baseball, but this year they are mediocre at best. You throw those two teams now over to the SEC, who is run by Auburn. Alabama is now starting to lead it in the mix for baseball, which apparently Alabama is starting to lead it into every single sport once again, because basketball just won the SEC title. You get teams like LSU now, who's ranked in the top 25, Mississippi State, who has been falling off, but Vanderbilt, Ole Miss,
Arkansas,
all these SEC,
Florida, Tennessee.
It's
90% of the conference, like you said earlier.
Yeah, it's really starting to become a game of your strength of schedule is getting so blown through the water unless you play a specific side of your bracket. Because the Big 12 strength of schedule, if you look at baseball, a lot of these teams might not make it if you're going to base it off that, because your strength of schedule within the conference isn't going to be based on a lot of ranked opponents. UConn last year, UConn didn't face a ton of ranked opponents, but they had one of the best bullpens in college baseball coming up to the regional tournament. And then they gave, who was it? They were in Stanford, or they were in Maryland's region last year, and they beat Maryland. And they gave Stanford a run for their money. You get a team like Texas State, who in the Sun Belt Conference, you had a couple of good teams who were hopping in and out of the top 25 at the bottom half of the rail, but their strength of schedule was better than maybe a team like Notre Dame. Even though Notre Dame was in the ACC, last year's ACC schedule might not have been the greatest for them. If you're going to look at strength of schedule, you truly have to look and see, even if some teams are small, what was their competition and where were big wins for some of these teams? I feel like a lot of the big wins when you're looking at strength of schedule get so drowned out because it's like, oh, they're not ranked in the top 25 at this point. It's like, okay, they weren't, but at the time, this was the run production that they were putting up. This was the team that they were beating. Like Coastal Carolina this year, I have no doubt in my mind that Wake Forest will end up being in the regional tournament and could potentially be one of the last teams standing in Omaha. Coastal Carolina can sit there and take a look and say, all right, we handled this team and we beat them in a close game. They can look at an East Carolina team, or Duke can look at this East Carolina team and say, okay, we might get paired with them in a regional if we keep having the run that we do. So I think strength of schedule needs to matter, but it needs to have a better breakdown of how you're actually going to manage what that looks like.
I don't know. The rankings, I don't even know if rankings need to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But do they need to have as much power as they do? I think
that's actually a really
hard.
Good question. Because I mean, you always bring up Old Dominion. So as of before this weekend came out, I'm looking at the bottom half of the top 25. You've got a South Carolina team who at the moment before the weekend was 11-1, Florida State 8-3, Southern Miss 8-3, Iowa 9-1, Campbell 8-2, Oregon State 9-2. What's Old Dominion's record?
Like 13-2. So, yeah, 13-2. I think.
Okay. And if you, let's say, because I'm not looking at the schedule right now, if you have any ranked wins or at least nobody.
They haven't played anybody.
So see, that's where they're gonna look at, because you get a team like Campbell. Yeah. But that's the problem sometimes too, is at the beginning of the year, you get a And this was still back when Virginia was unbeaten, Alabama, NC State was all unbeaten, and Old Dominion was unbeaten. Where is that? If you're going to look at so far before even strength of schedule gets talked about, where are you going to put them in a ranking if you're a 13-2 team and the bottom half of your top 25 is 3-loss, 3-loss, 1-loss, 2-loss, 2-loss? That's the point. And you have a Vanderbilt team who's sitting in the middle of the pack at 7, who's 8-4. And then TCU was 7-4. They're now out of the top 25. But I mean, still, that's just appalling to me that you can have a team that's 13-2 coming off the weekend, and if they don't find a way to sneak into the top 25, then something's got to be done about that. Granted, like you said, they may not have played a lot of tough opponents so far early in the season, but that Sun Belt conference, once they get in there, that's going to be an extremely tough conference.
So then maybe do we just not do top 25? Do a top, I don't know, 10, 15, and really make it be these are the top 10 teams? But then how do you make it not biased? Like, how do you not just include every team from the SEC?
Oh,
Like,
well,
how does a Campbell sneak in there if they are one of the best teams?
I think that's where you're going to have a real problem, because and that's the point of the top 16 national seeds, is who's the best team to have a host site. If you break it down now and shrink the pool to the top 10 best national seeds, I still think, just because of how the conference is going to go, you're still going to have about 6 SEC teams ranked within the top 10. Because as it stands at now, looking from this last weekend, LSU ranked number 1, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, Florida, Arkansas. That's 6 on my hand, 6 or 7 SEC teams on my hand. They would already rule the top 10 in a matter of minutes. Now, could you potentially push them out? Yeah.
Every team's a host site now.
Oh, Lord.
All right, start handing out participation trophies.
They're a host site for their own game. They don't even play anybody. Every team in collegiate baseball makes the College World Series.
Well, and I'll go one step further here. The last 8 teams standing in Omaha. Mm-hmm. SEC, Big 12, ACC, Big 12. Pac-12, SEC, SEC. And 2 of those teams that I ranked for the Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma. And where are their asses going next year? To the fucking SEC. Excuse my language. It's not
a child safe
program. Sorry.
This is a family friendly program.
As we talk about getting put on the hub. But anyways, the SEC is going to rule overall. And that's not from a standpoint of it's probably a standpoint of favoritism, but like Josh said earlier in the show, because we'll bring it back to that point, recruitment is your biggest part of that process, because you look at the pools that they can get down there from your Under Armour Classics, your Perfect Games, all of that BS that comes in there. All of these young talent kids are getting overlooked in states that can't afford to go there. I guarantee you there's a couple of kids from Nebraska, and there have been in the past, that are going to SEC schools. They may not be going to the LSUs. They may not be going to the Alabama. They may not be going to Auburn, but they're going to Kentucky. They're going to Missouri. They're getting recruited by these smaller SEC schools when they could be even still, if that's their plan and that's their best choice of school, then good for you. By all means, go. We got no problems with it. Go, have fun, do your college career. But at the same time, all of these Pac-12 schools that are on the West Coast that are pulling good talent, but not able to pull enough good talent to continue to make constant runs. The SEC has got a just massive, massive recruiting class from anywhere between the top of Virginia all the way down. They literally can recruit all 50 states without any question. Not a lot of these other schools can say that. Like LSU can literally go pitch. Like if I sat down with you and I was LSU's coach, I can say we can be in a regional all 4 years of your entire college career, and I guarantee you 2 out of those 4 years we can make it to Omaha. Doesn't even have to blink, doesn't have to bat an eye. That's your recruitment pitch. There you go. We want you to be on the next staff that could win the LSU Tigers 3 out of 4 championships in the SEC.
That's the same thing, though, as saying, like, having your national championship trophies and being like, here's like our standard. This is what we recruit the most out of, and we can see you fitting in here. That's all you need to do. Say it's going to be the same for Alabama football. It's going to be the same for like Duke basketball. It's going to be the same for all
It's
the big
not now.
powerhouse stuff. Okay, well, like previously, or Kentucky basketball,
Yeah.
or Villanova basketball, like all those kinds of schools. If they're the big schools, it could just be like, here it is.
That's why I have this proposed idea.
All right.
We gather every school in the country, every team with a baseball, every school with a baseball team. Bring their ass here to Omaha. They play one game. They lose. See you bye. You win. On to the next round.
So your College World
You have
Series
entire
you have
month.
all year. You have all, not all year. Not all year. You start training in January. You have who you're going to play first in January.
You
right?
could be
Okay.
0-1 on the season.
You
You're
have
just done.
up until April 1st. Game start April 1st. And then it's just sudden death. Team versus team.
God dang it.
Okay.
Ties
That's
after
terrible.
9 innings are decided by either a home run derby or rock, paper, scissors. Or 1v1 quick scope on Call of Duty. On the big screen. On the big screen.
On the Jumbotron.
Your response time, you're sitting there already shooting and he's gone.
Yep.
Okay, wait, here I'm actually not gonna lie with you, and everybody else is gonna say that this is a horseshit idea. That's not a stupid idea by
No, that
any
is a
means of-
stupid idea.
The way to
10%
handle extra
a
innings is
stupid
stupid.
idea.
So
way to handle-
You
here's
could have several teams
No,
ending
It's
0-1
not
on the
stupid
season.
because then
Go back
you
in the
get
dugout, like,
you
well,
get the situations.
we tried.
No, you get the situations where Iowa beat LSU. LSU would be see you bye. They
And
can't win the
that's-
Natty.
But like at the end of the day, like
Or
what?
fine, not one and see you bye. It could be like a 3-loss and you're gone. But each time you lose, it gets harder to get back to the top.
well, and so the only problem, and this would be the biggest hypothetical of if this was truly a good idea, the NCAA
This
would
will
run it.
happen. It's a great
Okay.
idea.
Okay, so here's the biggest thing that I find with the problem, besides ending with an 0-1 record or an 0-3 record. You just said it would be harder to get through the conference and to get through this big ass tournament or this big whole season. Bullpens are going to be shot. A lot of these teams, like, we'll throw Kinesis in the mix because that's the first team that I'm looking at. Guarantee you they will not have enough pitching to be able to get through 3 games if they keep winning. Because here's the biggest problem with that is you still have guys that are in the SEC, and like you said, Iowa could beat LSU gone. You could have, let's just say, Wake Forest loses to UC Santa Barbara, gone. There you go. You're now weeding out these teams, but still, how many of these SEC teams are going to be left? How many of just based on talent alone?
See, I don't know because you just never. Someday you could come out and a Campbell could just be hitting cock rackets all over the field, and Jimmy Chicken Tenders could be hucking 100 mile an hour from the right side. You don't
Jimmy-
know.
We need to get a shirt line started that says hashtag Jimmy Chicken Tenders hucking heat.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with baseball. With football, you have 4 quarters of 15 minutes, and that is just straight. Who's going to be faster, better, stronger,
Yeah.
and can
I
move?
love-
Like who's more athletic?
I love how Josh is just
This is the most A's I've ever heard.
No, it's not. You
Yes.
listen to the ACC
What the
bracket.
hell did you
description.
do?
No,
Did you?
dude.
Okay, it's slowly digressed. It's like literally this entire time I've been listening. It's like
It's been a Nick and I
I've been
conversation. 'cause you don't know what
I'm
the fuck
processing
is
it on
going
the side.
on.
That's fine because like I'm fine with like having the discussion of all this kind of stuff, and you're bouncing ideas off each other, and then you said some stupid shit, and then you built off of it. This is what
Absolutely.
we're first
You
talking
want to
about,
know?
like strength of stuff, and I get it. I understand that like it's difficult
you?
to do, to get everybody like an equal chance, all this kind of stuff. And obviously, going to a smaller school, you're not gonna have as much opportunity to get into the tournament as say a bigger school. But looking at like then I guess the just difficulty and the challenges that you would face at those SECs and stuff, it's already kind of designated that way.
Mhm.
It's saying that once you sign to go to this college, you're going to face that kind of competition. Now, you can find dogs at any level, and just like I said in our group chat before, there's a player on one of the national teams. He goes to a D2 and he smashed a double off of a 102-mile-an-hour pitch.
Oh, I thought you were
And like,
talking
so
about the Tynes Carpenter guy.
you'll find dogs at every single level. But I'm saying that you'll have more dudes at different schools just because they have that kind of pitch.
Mhm.
So you can't say it's just going to be equal all around. It's not going to be. Like
No.
in an ideal world, you'd love to have, all those upsets all the time, yada, yada, yada. But
No, at
just
the end, the
saying
best team's
you're
going to prevail.
gonna freaking
Yeah.
play one and done games for the entire season.
That's essentially what it is once you get to the regionals in a way.
It's two and
it's
Q in
two
the
and done.
regionals.
But it's essentially
But
the
it's
same
saying that you have to get
situation.
it there, so you can falter around a little
Mhm.
bit in the regular season, or you can have a great regular season. It's not like, oh, this is going to make or break it.
Yeah.
Like, I just
The only
idea was just not.
it's
I'm not
in,
vibing
in
with it.
theory, if you look
Not
at it,
happening.
it's not going to end well. It never will. But if you, the biggest problem I think that we're all seeing with the regional is that you get all those best teams in there, and 90% of them are from X conference. You throw all of these regions together, like Kinesis last year. In Coral Gables, you had a Miami team, an Arizona team, and an Ole Miss team who went on to win the College World Series. You have I'm just looking at the very overly stacked regionals. Also, New Mexico State last year was in the regional, and they're 0 for 12 this year, so that's fun. You take let's look at Southeast Missouri. Louisville, top ranked national seed, or top 16 national seed. An Oregon team who snuck in through the Pac-12, still consistent. Michigan, who was in the College World Series finals 2 years ago. You got another conference in there. Let's throw Alabama State in there. Georgia Tech from the ACC, Campbell, who last year was on a tear at the end of the year, and then Tennessee, #1 overall. And then they lost to Florida, or they lost to Notre Dame. I mean, there were conferences last year that were stacked for the regional tournament. And I get the fact that some team is going to get shafted. I truly get that. You're just going to get sent into a regional, and you're going to get dropped out fairly quick. I get that. It's always going to happen. But then you get a Coastal Carolina team who went 3 years going to the regionals, and then all of a sudden just comes through and beats an Arizona team back in 2016 who was absolutely on fire. Coastal Carolina had no chance of really being there because they had to break through LSU at Alex Box in the Super Regionals and upset them. The biggest thing I think that just is the look of this is conferences are in the Power Five are obviously obsolete. Like you can't truly get the same number as them when it comes to recruitment. Like you said, you can have dogs on any team and you can make a run. Oklahoma last year, that was just a team built of crafty guys playing small ball, doing everything right. And at the end of the year, they went on, made a run, and about won it all. That's the type of teams that I would like to see at just every level. And I know it's not going to happen because, like you said, it's just not everybody can be fair. So, but yes, he's there. Mikey had to go move his vehicle.
Yeah. Allegedly, no proof.
Allegedly,
No proof.
All right.
So,
all right, that's all you got to say. All right.
I mean, I get it, and we can sit here and go back and forth on this.
Yeah, my idea, top tier.
How we can set up all this kind of stuff.
Do you know how cool it would be to see Tommy Tanks versus Jimmy Chicken Tenders in a home run derby, rock, paper, scissors off, or COD 1v1? You're telling me that shit would not be cool?
I think the home run derby would be cool.
I think that Jimmy Chicken Tenders would be
thing.
My money's on Jimmy Chicken Tenders, man.
Absolutely. You never count Jimmy Chicken Tenders out.
If we
don't title this episode Jimmy Chicken Tenders.
Oh, it will be. It will be.
I'm gonna be upset.
We should do, if we continue to grow our audience, and if anybody's listening to the YouTube or on social media's comment, if you would like to see us try to make Jimmy Chicken Tenders t-shirts, he will have a bat that is literally a chicken tender.
Yo, Jay, Jimmy chicken tenders can be rye.
Jimmy chicken tenders. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
this would be great.
If you want no place like Homaha, Jimmy Chicken Tenders merch, we might be able to make it happen.
For sure.
Pretty
I know,
dope.
guy.
Just speaking of Jimmy chicken tenders.
Yeah, baby.
Just another guy. His name is Wyatt Hoodepole.
Not cool.
Set the strikeout record for Charlotte baseball. He got 17 Ks in 9 innings on 108 pitches.
That was on, what was it? I
think it's Friday.
I was going to say that was kind of towards the middle of the week. And I saw another post on Instagram from College Baseball Hub. I'm going to try to pull that up here. I know I saved it.
So they have a hub, but we don't?
It's the College Baseball Hub. I don't think that they're
We don't have the No Place Like Homaha hub.
We can, you know what? We'll make it on Instagram. That'll be our hub. We can start posting stuff on there.
No. Try again.
All right, so apparently nobody wants a College Baseball Hub on No Place Like Homaha. There was a perfect game thrown earlier this week. Oh, here it is. I got it. So, first perfect game of the 2023 season from Nick Gaddis. Went 9 innings, totally perfect from Grover City College. His stat line was 9 innings, obviously nobody on base or no hits, 14 Ks in that perfect game. And then he had 105 pitches.
Dog.
Perfect game and 105 pitches. That is thoroughly impressive.
Nice.
So
here's something for you. Texas State has a guy named Chase Mora. 4 home runs yesterday, Saturday.
Oh, Lord.
He only has 20 plate appearances in his college career. He has 17 RBIs and 8 dongs as a freshman.
Wow.
That man fucks. He was literally glittering in the on-deck circle.
Yikes.
Glittering.
Big grocery store.
Well,
meanwhile, the Padres had a 16-year-old catcher in spring training yesterday.
I did see that, and that just doesn't make me feel very good at all. I'm 24 years old and washed.
Yeah. Well, I think we got one more thing to talk about before we end the weekend here, because we talked about
on the hub.
No.
Oh.
No, but talking about screwing that umpire, that's what we're probably talking about.
Yeah. So, because Josh sent the tweet, everybody has seen this. If you're a baseball fan, you have seen this absolutely abysmal strike 3 call. So hold on here. Let me pull up the tweet here. Because this umpire in the game versus
New Orleans and Mississippi Valley State.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Last Friday night gets suspended indefinitely and this was announced by the Southland Conference, for calling the worst possible strike 3 and strike 2 call ever. The strike 2 call was pretty much at the dude's ankles, middle of the zone, but at his ankles, and that was a 1 and 2, or that turned into the 1-2 count. Then you throw it to the strike 3 pitch,
batter's box.
Other batter's box, even lower than the last pitch. It ended up in the dirt, and it was a rung up strike 3. The catcher from, I believe, what was it, Mississippi State or Mississippi Valley State, had to hold the dude back, and was absurd, like obviously upset that he was happy they got the win, but upset himself.
New Orleans.
The catcher was from New Orleans, or okay. So, yeah, if you guys want to talk about absurd umpires and absurd stuff getting screwed up in college baseball, fix the umpiring, which they obviously did.
Both of them just made it about themselves. I feel like the umpire took it completely out of the batter's hands.
Oh, yeah.
Was just, I don't know if it was just the tempers there or he wanted to be done with the game or all this kind of stuff. He did that. And then the batter as well, after the strike 2 call was called, basically just threw a little temper tantrum outside of the box and was like hopping around like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I get it. Just on both sides, it was just very, very, very poorly run and very immature. I'd say from the batter's reaction and from the home plate umpire's then third strike call. It was just didn't need to happen all around. He should have just been like, for the next call, then outside that should have been a ball, then it should be 2-2.
Yeah.
You know, because bad calls happen sometimes, but like that was just clearly sending a message.
Yeah. And I mean, to an extent, I mean, as a hitter, I know it's frustrating because I think all three of us have been a part of some bad calls in our baseball careers that have ruined games or have just been the epitome of, and everybody says, well, you can't let a call ruin the at bat, which is true. You cannot have that be the excuse for your at bat being ruined because you got to be able to flush it and move on. It's baseball. But at the same time, it does play a factor.
But that last one, he couldn't even like reach it. Like he couldn't even swung and like
there was no way.
Completely took the at bat out of his hands then. So
yes. But otherwise, big scores kind of going around from the weekend to finish out. We got a lot of games going finals. We had a lot of games canceled. Penn State was canceled. Kennesaw State versus Michigan was canceled. Michigan State versus yeah, I know it has been. It's been very bad. Campbell, East Carolina, our two top 25 teams, they didn't play their third game this weekend. Nebraska couldn't play against Illinois State today. And that's pretty much all the cancellations that we've got for the rest of the day. Otherwise, teams are just finishing up throughout the day. And we got to get ready to go make our brackets, boys. Selection Sunday.
Oh, for basketball. I thought you said for baseball. I was like, no.
I was like,
not yet.
Yeah, let's get a pre-round of preseason round of 64 4 weeks in.
Not a chance. But yeah, looking at that,
Old Dominion through 63 times.
I do believe that all conference play starts this week, right?
Yep.
Or if it hasn't already, then yes.
SEC
yeah, because ACC already started.
Big 12.
Yeah.
The rest of conference play will start. I think the ACC.
The Big East doesn't, and I don't think the Big 10 does.
Yep. It's still shitty weather.
Right.
Are you kidding me?
But it's right around the corner.
Snow flurries outside here.
Yeah, get wrecked, nerd. Walk outside. It's nice and warm.
Got him. Yeah, but we're getting to about that time when weather's going to, again, play a huge factor in it. Because obviously people aren't going to be able to travel as much for like the tournaments down south or being able to be indoors for stuff. Since conference play is going to be starting, so they're going to have to be at those schools. So sweet. All right.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's again all I got for you guys. Again, just checking out the games coming up. Again, like we just said, conference play is going to be starting up, so just paying attention to that. Otherwise, best of luck to people picking March Madness brackets. Again, I don't have any sleepers there. I'm going to look it up the day before and pretty much just guess. So there's that. But again, if you haven't already, follow us on Twitter and TikTok at Homaha Pod. Again, you can find us no place like Homaha on YouTube, as well as Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. Sweet. Yeah. Well, I'll see you later then. I don't know what else to say there, but...
All right.
Okay. Catch you guys later.
Bye.